So today is Kesubos Ayin Hey, Kesubos 75, and we're going to start on the top of Ayin Hey Amid Aleph in medias res, as we say, in the middle of things, because the Gemara had recorded a dispute on Ayin Daled Amud Beis on 74b about a contradiction between two brisos. One brisa says, one source says that if the husband marries the woman on the condition that she has no vows, and then it turns out she has vows, but she then went to a chacham and annulled her vows. So retroactively, the vows were all annulled. So one says that the marriage is then valid. But the other source says that even though she goes and annuls the vows, the marriage is still not valid. So how do we make sense of these two contradictory brisos? So the Gemara says the first answer is they reflect two opinions, whether or not a husband would be bothered by his wife having to go to court to annul her vow, whether or not he would say, Adam ishto whether or not a husband wants. The one who says that the marriage is still binding is because he said he doesn't care if his wife has to go to court to annul it. The one who says the marriage is not binding says the husband wouldn't have wanted his wife to have to go to court. So therefore, the marriage is still not binding. We now see on the top of 75a, around 8 or 9 lines from the bottom, a second approach. Rava Amar Hacha Be'isha Chashuva Askinan. Rava says that when we say that the marriage is going to be not binding, we're talking about an Isha Chashuva, we're talking about a distinguished woman. And so therefore, even according to the one who says that the husband doesn't care that she has to go to court, nevertheless, we're going to say she's not betrothed. What's the reason? Because he's going to say, I don't want to be prohibited to her relatives, because since this woman is a woman who's going to be taking vows, and so therefore she's an Isha Nadrana, she's a vower, then therefore I'm worried she's going to vow again. But I also don't want to divorce her, because if I divorce her, I'm not going to be able to be married into this very distinguished family. And so therefore, I don't want any betrothal there. And even if the Chachamim will remove the vow, because maybe she's going to take another vow, I'm going to end up having to divorce her. So therefore, he says that he completely annulled the marriage. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, Yachi Seifa. What about the next clause of the brisa? Let's say the woman says, I'll marry you on the condition you have no vows. And then he goes to the chacham, and the chacham v'hitiro, and the chacham annuls his vow, or eitzel rofe v'ripeos. Or let's say going to the doctor, and the doctor healed him. Mukudeshes. We say under those circumstances, it's betrothed. But if we're talking about the same situation where he's an ish chashuv, why is it a betrothal? Well, if he's a distinguished man, why is it a vow betrothal? Listen, it should say, Ein Mekudeshes. Why don't we say under those circumstances, it's not betrothed? And we should say, if the first case was talking about a woman who was coming from an Isha Chashuva, from a distinguished family, why don't we say the next case is also coming from a distinguished family? And let her say that she doesn't want to become prohibited to his relatives, and so therefore the marriage shouldn't be binding. So Gemara gives a principle which it says several times in Shas. We had it in Yevamos, at the very end of Yevamos. It appears in Kedushin, in Baba Kama. The basic concept is that the woman wants to be married, woman wants to be married more than the man wants to be married. So that's what it says, Kidurei Shlakish. Amar Shlakish, that basically the woman, it's better for her to be living tandu with another man than to be staying as a widow. So she wants to remain with him. And so she would not get divorced, she would not refrain from getting divorced, she would not annul the marriage because she says maybe he's going to make another vow and then I can't divorce him. She wouldn't do that because she'd rather take her chances with him than be a widow. Abaye says further proof is the Shumshana Gavra Korsa Becharasa Ramela. that even if he's a small guy, she sticks up his, she puts her throne amongst all the princesses of the land and says, look, I also have a husband just like you. And that's the second approach. Rav Papa says, Dinafsa Gavra Tikraya Besifi Baba. That even if her husband is just a wool comber, nevertheless, she's not embarrassed to call him on the threshold of her house and to sit next to him in front of everybody. She's going to be super proud of him. And Rav Ashi says the Kol Sagavra, that even if her husband comes from a really pashut family, just like a simple guy, nothing special. All she wants is lentils for the soup, and that's all she wants. Not looking for anything special. And then the Gemara says, Tana, and there's a brisa that says, which is also interesting because all these were explanations of the Amorayim, but it must have been reflecting an earlier brisa. The woman wants to get married. It says, Vikuan mizanos v'tolos bebale. And all these women actually end up, they're married to these guys who are lower, they're lower class. And so they make believe like they're in love with them, but that's only so that they can have adulterous relationships. And when they get pregnant, they attribute it to their husband. So that's a little cynical ending, but that's what they say. So now the Mishnah said any blemish that disqualifies by a Kohen is going to disqualify a woman as well from if he says, I'm marrying you on the condition that you have no blemishes. What's a blemish? She says any blemish that disqualifies a Kohen. The Gemara in Bechoros lists the blemishes that disqualify a Kohen will also disqualify you. Tana Hosifo, and so we learned in the Brisa, they added on to those blemishes that disqualify the Kohanim, they added on Zeya, they added on sweat if she perspires, Vishuma if she has a mole, Vireach Hapeh, and if she has a very bad breath. So Vahani, so the Gemara asks the question, Vahani Bekahani Lo Pasli, do these defects not disqualify a Kohen? But didn't we learn in the Mishnah? What does the Mishnah tell us in Bechoros? It tells us Hazakein v'achoa v'amazuham, that who is disqualified to serve. What is a disqualified animal to bring as a sacrifice? If the animal is old and sick and smelly, v'tanan mumam elu. And we learned that these blemishes, being fluent, being over, and psulim ba'adam, these blemishes also disqualify a Kohen from serving, whether they're permanent or temporary blemishes. And so we see from here that Zeya is like Mizuham. Zeya, and Gemara assumes that Zeya, the sweat, is like the smell, and so therefore it should be disqualifying. It's also disqualified by a Kohen. So why do we say that the woman is added on to the disqualifications of the Kohen? So Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina Lokasha Kam Bezeh Overes Kam Bezeh She'ein Overes. So there's two different types of zeya. There's sweat. You could have a chronic condition of sweating, but you're always sweating, and so that's called the zeya she'ein overes. That you're always sweating. Whereas there's other cases that are zeya eno veris, that there's sweat that you can't get rid of. And so therefore, if there's a sweat that you can get rid of, then the Kohen's not disqualified. He'll just get rid of the sweat when he goes to serve. Even though he'll come back the next day, he's not serving the next day. Rav Ashi says, zeya amazuam karamas. You think that zeya is basically the same as the mizuam? Zeya is a sweat and mizuam is a smell. Rashi explains, Lav Rumyahi, it's not a question, because but when it comes to mizuam, gufu masriach, adam nami posel, the whole body smells. Avalzeya de adam, but the sweat of a person is not going to disqualify by the Kohanim. So the smell will disqualify by a Kohen, but not the zeya. Why? Hasam gabe Kohanim efshar la'avra b'kihua dechamra. So by the Kohanim, they don't have the concern of the zayah, because you can get rid of the smell that comes from the perspiration by taking, right before you serve in the temple, taking a bath in the wine vinegar, so you can get rid of it. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, also we would say that's why the Kohen doesn't. That's why the Kohen is not disqualified by the bad breath. In the bad breath, the Kohen could stick. They used to have like a peppercorn that would stick in their mouth, and then he can mask the bad breath while he does the service. But since the wife, since he's always talking to her, it's not possible to mask the bad breath by just sticking a peppercorn in it. So it says the Gemara, Hi Shuma Hechidami. What kind of mole is this that disqualifies? That we're saying is disqualifying blemish by a woman. What kind of mole are we talking about? Either ispa seir, if it's a mole which has hair in it, it should disqualify the woman and the Kohen. Either low is seir, if it's a mole that doesn't have hair, then we say ishuma gedolah. If it's a large mole, it should disqualify the woman and the Kohen. And ishuma katana, and if it's a small mole, it shouldn't disqualify anyone. So the Gemara says, so what are we talking about here? Titania, how do we know this? Because the Brisa says, Shuma sheyesh baseir. Let's say you have a mole that has hair. Harei zemum. Then we're going to say that that is a blemish. Ein baseir, but if it has no hair in it, then gedolah. Then if it's large, harei zemum, it's considered a blemish. Katana ein zemum. But if it's small, it is not a blemish. Ve'ezu hi gedolah. What's considered a disqualifying mole? Pirish or showing a mole ad ki iser ha'itaki, like an Italian coin. So anyway, we see from here that if it's then what's the difference between a woman's, why is a mole a disqualifying blemish by a woman but not by a man? So Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina be'omedes al padachta. We're talking about a blemish that is on her forehead, and so the mole has no the mole doesn't have any hair, and it's small, but it's in a bad place, and so therefore it's disqualifying for her, but not for the Kohen. So the Gemara says, well, padachta ra'av in a face. Well, if it's on her forehead, he saw it, and he obviously didn't object. Ra'av in a face. So Amar Papa, but omedus latachas kipa shal rosha. No, it's underneath, like the handkerchief she wears on her head. Sometimes it's visible, sometimes it's not. So he must have missed it. And Amrav Chisda ha milsa megava Rabbi Shmili migu Rabbi Shila. And he says, I'm going to tell you a teaching that I heard from a great rabbi. And who is it? From Rabbi Shila. He says, Nashcha Keleb, let's say a dog bit her, Vinasa Mekomot Salekes, and it made a scab on her. And raise a mum, that's also a disqualifying mum if she has the marks, the remnants of a dog bite. Amar Chisda kol ava be'isha harei mum. If a woman has a very thick voice, that's going to be considered a disqualifying quality. Shenemar ki kolech arev u'marech naveh, because your voice is sweet and your appearance is beautiful. So we see that a very deep voice is considered to be like a voice that's off as a disqualifying quality. It's grounds for divorce. Tani Rabbi Nasan Birav, he said, Rabbi Nasan Birav taught, Bein Dadei Isha Tefach. He taught just a general statement, and he said, between the dadim, the dadim is a word for breast. I'll just refer to them as dadim from now on because it's a lashon nekiah. So between the dadim of a woman is the tefach. Is going to be a handbreadth. So what did he mean by this? So he meant to say, well, this is a tefach and it's beautiful that way. He said, no, he was saying that that's a blemish. Vikama. And what's a meaning to say, and what's considered, Rashi says when it says Vikama, what's considered the appropriate thing. So what's considered to be beautiful for a noila? What's considered the amount of space there that's considered to be beautiful? Amar Bai shalosh etzbaos, 3 fingers. So the 3 fingers is considered to be appropriate space. Tanya Rabbi Nassan Amar Kol Isha Shedadea Gaz Mishal Chavrusea Harei Zemun. Any woman who has her dadim are bigger than her friends, that's considered a defect. Vikama, and how much bigger is a problem? Amar Rabbi Yasha Bar Rabbi Yeshua Levi Mishmei Rabbi Shimon Levi Tefach. If it's a tefach bigger than her friends, it's going to be a problem. Gemara asks, Mi Ika Ki Gavna. Is it even possible for a woman to have dadim that are tefach bigger than somebody else's dadim? Gemara says, yeah. The Amar Rav Bar Chana, Ani Ra'isi Aravaya Achas Shev Shila Dadel Achara V'Nika Espana. He said, I saw an Arab woman who she slung her dadim behind her and nursed her son. What was he doing looking at her? It doesn't mean that he was gazing at her. It means he just noticed it. So, Utzion Yeyamer Ish V'ish Yuadba. And so now, since the Gemara has this statement, the Gemara has another statement said by the same teacher. So, which is Rav Miyasha, the Ben Benosha of Yeshua Levi. So the pasuk says, "Utzion Yeyamer," from Tehillim to Zion will be said, "Ish v'ish yuladba." A man was born in it. V'hu yichonaneha elyon, and it will be formed above. Why does it say the word ish twice? Amar Rav Miyasha, Braid Rav Yeshua Levi, Echad hanoah above, Echad hamitzapel arosa. Who is the one who is called a Zionist? The one who was born in Zion, and also the one who was mitzapel at Zion. That's what the Gemara says. Echad hanoah above, Echad hamitzapel arosa. Whether you're born in it or whether you're eager to see it. Amar Abaye, B'chad minayu adas katrei minan. And one of them is better than 2 of ours. And Amar Rava, B'chad minan, but one from ours, kisalakos. And when it goes up to Eretz Yisrael, Adif Katrei Minayo is Kisakasam Adif Katrei Minayo. Then the one of us that goes up there, he is better than 2 of theirs. So Rabbi Yirmiyah, when Rabbi Yirmiyah was here, he didn't even understand what the Rabbanan was saying. Kisakasam. When we went up to there, then we say, once he got there, we carry on. He called us Bavli Tipshai, the foolish Babylonians. So now we're up to the Mishnah on the bottom of Kesubos and Hey Amid Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Hayuba Mumin. Hayuba Mumin Va'oda B'Beisavia. Let's say she has a blemish while she's still in her father's home, and he married her on the condition she has no blemishes. The father has to prove that these blemishes only came upon her after she was already betrothed, and so therefore the marriage is still binding because she had the blemishes after she got married. And so there, that's his bad luck. He married her without blemishes. She got the blemish afterwards. So once she marries into the domain of the husband, then the husband has to bring a proof. So since she's living now with the husband have to bring a proof. That the husband have to bring a proof that until she was not betrothed, that once she's in the husband's domain, the husband has to bring a proof that she had these blemishes before the betrothal. Then it's the husband's responsibility. And therefore the marriage was done under false circumstances and it's disqualified. That's the position of Rabbi Meir. The Chachamim say, when do we say that the husband could make a claim about the blemishes, the moment of a seser. If it's a private or a concealed blemish, or the top of 75b, of a moment of a goloi, but if it's a blemish that's visible to everybody, Inu Yachol Liton, he would not be able to make such a claim. He wouldn't be able to make such a claim because presumably he would have seen it and been appeased. That's what Rashi says. And so too, if there's a bathhouse in that city, says the Chachamim, even if it was a concealed or private blemish, he wouldn't be able to make such a claim. Because he investigates her first amongst his relatives to tell, he has to tell her about any possible blemishes on her body. So the Gemara says, what's the reason why we say that if she's found in her while she's betrothed with a blemish, the father can bring a proof that she had the blemish after she got engaged, and then the marriage is still binding because the father brings a proof. But if the father will not brought a proof, then we would say the husband is believed, and to say that you must have had this blemish before we got married. So money that is consistent with the position we had back on your Beis and Beis in the Mishnah, which is Rabbi Yehoshua. We see that first clause of the Mishnah is consistent with the position of Rabbi Yehoshua, who says, "Lo mi pia ano chayin." We don't trust her. We don't rely upon her. So Ema Seifa, but the next clause of the Mishnah states that when she marries, fully marries the husband, about that the husband has to bring a proof. What's the reason why the husband has to bring the proof at that point? The husband has to bring the proof. Why? Raya. So we say at that point, what's the reason why the husband can bring a proof and say that once he brings the proof, she had the blemish before they got married? Time of the Maiseh Baal Raya. Hello, Maiseh Baal Raya. But if the husband would not have brought the proof, Hahav Mehemen, we would believe the father. We'd have the default. Well, then also Rabbi Gamliel. Well, this follows the other opinion which we had on Daf Beis in the Mishnah, who says that manas, we do trust the woman about her own body. So how do we reconcile the first clause of the Mishnah with the second clause? So Rabbi Elazar, so Rabbi Elazar says we can't reconcile them. Tavra, we have to break the Mishnah. Misha shanazu lo shanazu. The first clause is like Rabbi Gamliel. So excuse me. The first clause is like Rabbi Yehoshua, and the second clause is like Rabbi Gamliel. The first clause is like Rabbi Yehoshua, that we don't trust her; she's not in a menace about her own body. The second clause is like Rabbi Gamliel, who says we do. So Amar Rabba, no, lo tema. So Rabba first asked the question. He says you don't have to say like Rabbi Elazar. You don't have to break our mission. He says lo tema Rabbi Yehoshua lo azel basar chazaka to gufa klal. Don't say that Rabbi Yehoshua says we never trust her about her own body. So no, when do we say that Rabbi Yehoshua does not follow or trust in her own body? That's where there's a counter force. And what's the counter force? That the husband is saying, I have my money in my possession. I don't have to give up my money unless you prove something to me. So prove to me that you didn't have this blemish when we get married, if you want to get my money. So that when do we say this? So therefore, Rabbi says, Rabbi Yehoshua doesn't always say we don't believe her. But if there's a chazaka of the money, that's when he says, when the husband has a chazaka of the money. But if the husband doesn't have a chazaka of the money anymore, also Rabbi Yehoshua basar chazaka de gufa. Then Rabbi Yehoshua would say, then we do trust her. Depends where the chazaka is. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa. In Baharas Kodam was say, or it says about a woman who about the case of Saras, if the mark on the skin came prior to the Kodam was prior to the white hair, then we're going to say Tamei. Then we're going to say then the halacha is that the person has Saras, but in Sarah Lavan Kodam Baharas, But if the white hair came prior to the Baharas, then she's tahor. Safek, if we're not sure, tamei. The Rabbi Yeshua says no, and since there's no chazaka of money against the body here, Rabbi Yeshua is going to say keha. It's dimmed. What does keha mean? Amarabba keha tahor. The meaning to say she's tahor. So we see from here that Rabbi Yeshua says that we do believe the chazaka of the body in the case of Isser v'heter about saras. So therefore, how do we reconcile the first clause of the Mishnah with the second clause? Rabbi introduced us to a new concept. He says, "Kan nimtzu v'kan hayu." No, because we say it depends where it happened, where we find the mark. Since we found it in the house while she's still living in her father's house, we say that's where it was the whole time. And Seifa, since we found it in her new husband's home, Nami kan nimtzu v'kan hayu. We'll say that that's where it was the whole time. So Eisvei Abaye challenges Rava. Because we say nechnas arushas about tzarach avi raya sha'at shelo tisaris hayibol mumen. So Abaye challenges Rabbi because it says if once she comes into her father's domain, nechnas arushas once she comes into her husband's domain, the husband needs to bring a proof sha'at shelo tisaris hayibol mumen that before she was engaged. That before she got engaged, she had the blemish. But so as the Bayan Rava, means that he has to bring a proof that he had it before she was engaged, but it wouldn't be enough to prove that she had it when she was engaged. Now, according to you, if we proved it that she had the blemish while she was engaged, that would have been enough for us to say this is where the blemish took place to begin with. So therefore, Rava would respond, Amalei Mishinis Arsa, then why do we want to prove that she had it before she was engaged? Mishum Diko Meimar, if she had the blemish after she was engaged, then we would have said that wouldn't be sufficient, because we would say Mishum Diko Meimar Chazaka Ein Adam Shota Bekos Elam Came Badko, because we would have said a person would not have drink from the cup unless he first checked it. The high Rav and Ephayis. And so therefore he must have seen it and therefore checked it. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, it's also before the blemish. Even before the engagement. So the Gemara is going to say, a person, we have a chazaka, a person would not have seen a blemish and waived the right to it. The Gemara says, well, if that's the case also, then even after the betrothal, so we'll look at this. We'll stop here. We'll pick this up, God willing. Tomorrow we'll pick it up. For now, we'll stop a few minutes early every day so that we could start to sleep at exactly 7.